painting trees, rocks, and water. Seems like a pretty good thing to know how to do, so let's get right into it. Today I'm going to be painting this scene. This is a combination of a few pictures that my family and I took while at Zion National Park in Utah, which is just an incredible place. And I kind of combined a few pictures because there wasn't one in particular that I was super happy with, and eventually I got this. And I really wanted to focus on painting rocks in this video, but I also discovered in my own way a new technique for painting trees, and I also found something new for painting water. So it kind of turned into a all-around tutorial, and that's perfect because I just hit a new milestone, 100 subscribers here on YouTube. So I thought I could put together a special. I'm not late at all. What do you mean? No, I'm not late. So yes, thank you all so much for that, and I thought I would put together hopefully the best video yet, but here is a tutorial on how to paint kind of like the 3 most important things out there. The very first thing that I did when making this painting is I actually tried out a new technique that is called a grisaille. Don't quote me on that, I probably horribly botched the name. But what you do is you cover the canvas in a pretty dark color, and then you wipe off. At first I thought I could do it with a brush, but you have to do it with like a rag. You wipe off parts of that in the direction of in the place where the brighter highlights will be. And this is kind of the equivalent of making a sketch, except it's a little bit more detailed than a normal sketch. And then I got right into painting the sky. And a lot of what I think I struggled with as a painter early on was the sky. I would always paint the entire sky just blue, and then later on paint clouds into it. The 2 things I didn't realize is that the clouds they blend with the sky a lot. And there's also usually way more clouds in the sky than you would expect. Now, when it came to painting the rocks in the distance, these are the big, towering, monolithic rocks that Zion National Park is so famous for. What I did was, in the beginning, I kept the colors, I kept their saturation and their vibrancy really low. So you'll notice that in comparison to the end product, the rocks that I'm painting right now are actually really kind of like monotone. They don't really have much difference in colors. They're not super vibrant. And what this does is it means that as you go on, you build up the sense of more depth as you continue to make it. And now the next thing I did was paint the river. In Zion National Park, this river is called the Virgin River, and it's a really cool, like, crystal blue color, but also with a hint of green, and it's so amazing. And I wanted to add a waterfall, because we saw lots of those, and the water is going to be really turbulent at the bottom. And so, to replicate that, what I did was, in the beginning, I just did little dashes from side to side to kind of imitate that, and then later on I go in and add thicker, more texturized paint to add some more like detail to it. Now in regards to these boulders up ahead, especially the big one that I'm painting now, I really wanted to make sure that I got these rocks looking pretty realistic because, yeah, they're kind of the main subjects of this painting, aside from the stream maybe. And what I did was, just like the rocks in the background, in the beginning I had it very monotone, very little vibrancy, and then I would go in, after it's dry, and add in these darker and lighter highlights that kind of builds up the shape of these rocks. Because rocks are really jagged. They have kind of this major misconception is that they're always kind of round, but if you try to paint it like that, you'll realize that it doesn't really go well. And speaking of things that don't really go well, this tree, I don't know what I was thinking in the beginning, but yeah, these two trees, I thought, oh, for the underlayer it'll be good to kind of have like a all-encompassing color that I then build on later. No, this just did not go well. And that's a clear example of when you're painting, a lot of the learning process is when things do not go right. So, yep, you'll see me change that up pretty soon. As I'm painting the foreground, and more like the ground cover, I was really glad that I toned this canvas, and I would highly recommend it for anyone who is painting a scene like this, or really just any scene, because the brown of the undertone, or of the tone layer, is still showing through, even as I add layers of paint on top of it, and that is really crucial because there's never any white canvas left behind. It's always a different color. Now, if there's one tip I have to improve the sky, well, aside from what I said before, it's using the color cobalt teal. Not pure cobalt teal, but mix it in to ultramarine blue and add that in to the lower layers of the sky. That makes this really cool gradient where the sky gets hazier, or appears to be hazier, as you get lower and lower and closer to the horizon. And it really adds to the effect of the whole painting. And I'm just going through brightening up the clouds to improve that look. And now when it comes to water, this is what I was talking about earlier. You go through and just do almost like little smiley faces. Not super accentuated, almost perfectly straight lines, but just little lines with different colors. Like every time you bring your brush down, make sure there's just a little bit of a different color on it. And just do that, and it will drastically improve the water. Also, use texture. With each texturized, that's a word now, with each texturized piece brushstroke, it has its own little shadow, and that really is important to making the water seem super realistic. And now, I'm coming through and creating all the shadows in these rocks by creating this almost spider web of shadows in these rocks. What I can do is plan for in the future how I can shape these faraway cliffs so that they have more depth to them. And when I start working on it, you'll see that I'm adding these much brighter and more vibrant hues. The contrast between the light and the dark is starting to show more. There's starting to be different colors, like deep reds in a more orange rock, or almost like dark blues in the shadows, things like that. And that's what's really building up the realistic look of these rocks. Obviously, I'm not the best at painting rocks, but I'm learning this too, and it does look really cool because there's that background layer that is less saturated and less vibrant, and then the foreground layer, which is just way more, like all the colors are just more accentuated. And the other thing that this does is it really helps with determining where the light source is. In this case, obviously, I kind of knew it was off to the upper right-hand corner as the highlights of this rock showed, but more, rather than just a general light source, painting in these highlights really sort of determines exactly where it is and almost how the light is bouncing off of other things. And by just slowly building up these layers of detail, you can determine not just where the main light source is, but also how light is just interacting with the whole painting. For most of the time painting these rocks, what I used was a flat brush, so the edge of it has no shape, it's just a perfect rectangle. But for more of the finer details, I love using dagger brushes. In particular, this tiny 1/8 inch ivory dagger made by Rosemary & Company. It's really just amazing how the dagger brush is so influential in how I paint. The dagger brush is so versatile, and no, I'm not trying to advertise for dagger brush makers, but what I love about the dagger brush is that there are so many ways that you can use it. And in this case, it's a really good tool for creating thick and expressive painting. I love using thicker, more texturized brush strokes in my painting because it really just draws attention to those finer details. And dagger brushes are just perfect for that. Now here I'm coming in and improving the tree trunk quality, and I'm kind of getting prepared for an eventual overhaul of the trees because I knew that was in order. Like, they kind of just sucked before. And I was painting just these little pine trees in the background. And what I wanted to do was, they're more like shrubs than full-grown spruces, like most people would kind of expect to see, because this is in a desert, and there's very few of these. In fact, I may have even taken a total creative liberty while making this, and there may not have ever been pine trees in Zion, but they fit the atmosphere, that's for sure, and it really added to it. And to paint these trees, I just mixed phthalo green, ultramarine blue, and cobalt teal together, along with a bit of black to darken it, and it looked amazing. In regards to painting the back, kind of the distant areas of a painting, in this case, this isn't too far away because we're kind of in this narrow canyon anyways, but the key thing to do is just always make the scale of everything really small. If something in the foreground, like kind of a little field between two areas of grass, if that is, say, 1 inch wide in the foreground, make that 1/8 of an inch wide in the background. And that kind of like mushing together of all these details really will improve the background areas. Now, this is when the whole process of painting these rocks really slowed down. You can see just how slowly I'm moving my hand, really making sure that these fine lines stayed fine. And I really wanted to just build up the surface of this rock, make it seem really jagged and rock-like. And right now it kind of looks like a bit of a mess, and I will improve that later by kind of consolidating some of the colors. But the key is just keep working on it until you literally can't do anymore, because that is when you truly will have the most realistic rock you can. Because they're pretty interesting things, they are. Like, just so you have to just put in the time to really make them look realistic. And here, I just wanted to make these rocks look like they were wet. After all, they are making up a waterfall. So that's why I'm darkening the color and adding more blue to it. This is the part in the painting where everything just really starts to slow down. There's fewer and fewer clips from here, so it may seem like it's going faster, but really this is the part where I have to start settling in for the long haul. There's still so many small details that need to be attended to. But the last big thing, and this is one of the biggest tips I have of this video, is how to paint these trees here. And that starts with a good trunk. thick, expressive work. Once again, just make lines in the right directions with the right lighting on it, and it just works amazingly. And you also have to paint in the big limbs of the tree. Obviously, that's kind of tedious, and depending on how detailed you want to go, you can add in small, tiny little branches, but ultimately that will only have a little bit of improvement. And then, this is what I was so happy with. You put a lot of paint on a kind of medium-sized brush and just tap around. That leaves behind little areas of thicker paint and areas of thinner paint, and it really gives the impression of leaves. Not so much when you're up close. When you're up close, you can tell that it's just little specks of leaf or little splotches of paint, but from afar, it looks like you can see enough of the background through it that it gives the impression of like glittering leaves in the wind. And the other thing that's important is you got to break up the colors of it. Have the leaves closer to the center of the tree be a lot darker than the ones on the outside. And because I wanted to break it up a little bit, I made this tree over here a lot brighter yellow. They're cottonwood trees, if I can recall right, in Zion. And the cottonwood trees have a brief time where their leaves, kind of like aspens, turn yellow. And this tree also isn't as close to the river as the other one. So I thought brightening up the leaves would make it seem like it has less water, and therefore it's less green in its colors. So it's and I was at Zion in the fall, so this one would be turning to drop its leaves sooner than the tree that is closer to the river because it has less water. Obviously, that's a detail that probably will go unnoticed by most people. It probably wasn't really that important to add, but it's little things like that that eventually will improve the painting. The very last thing I had to do was, one, just add a final little bit of detail to these rocks, and two, add in grass. As you can still tell, there is plenty of that brown underlayer still showing through, and I didn't like that, so I had to just add in some grass. And that was really monotonous, but when I got it done, I was so happy with the end product. And with that, I was almost done. There's just a few things left to do, but I'll save you from having to hear my voice any longer. Enjoy the rest of the video, and I'll end with the clip of me grabbing a hair.